Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer 55551, and I am back with a video review. Actually, this one a double review, to be exact, where I'll be taking a look at the game Super Mario RPG, a remaster slash remake of the 1996 Super Nintendo classic on the Nintendo Switch. Plus, I want to give my thoughts on Paramount Plus Knuckles, a sort of a mini-series that takes place after the events of Sonic 2, but before the start of Sonic 3. I just finished watching all 6 episodes of that. And for parents out there, it's worth pointing out that Super Mario RPG is rated E for everyone, all ages, by the ESRB rating system, while the Paramount Plus's Knuckles is rated TVPG here in the USA. In 1996, Nintendo, along with collaboration of Squaresoft, that was their original name before they merged and became known as Square Enix, released basically a game almost like very much near the end of the Super Nintendo's life cycle, though. And that was a game called Super Mario RPG Legends of the Seven Stars. Now, to me, this was the first time I've ever played like an actual RPG or anything like that. I never really got into Final Fantasy until like later in my life, not when it originally came out back on the NES or Super NES, or when it really blew up on the PlayStation with Final Fantasy VII back in 1997 and all. So for me, Super Mario RPG was my first time ever playing an RPG, and it was definitely a different take from up to this point the classic Mario formula, or the Mario games that a lot of us were playing from the days back from the original NES and up to like now and everything like that. And it turned out to be a fun game, indeed. The idea of Mario in sort of an RPG type of a realm was sort of an interesting idea to see Nintendo and Square Enix do this. This would also open the door to other takes on the Mario RPG without Square Enix and all, or Squaresoft. That would be open the doors to stuff like the Paper Mario series, to the Mario and Luigi series that we would see from, at one point, Alpha Dreams for the Game Boy Advance, DS, 3DS, and of course we're getting a new entry for the Nintendo Switch. So it was kind of interesting to hear when last year, this review is kind of late to be exact, when we were basically getting a full-on remaster or remake of the original 1996 classic coming to the Nintendo Switch. Now, I was a little curious to see why they brought this game over, considering the fact that the Super Nintendo version still holds up even after all these years and all. And after spending some time with Super Mario RPG, I would say the game is still enjoyable, still enjoyable even after all these years and all. While some might say whether you think Nintendo should or should not have remastered or remade this game, though, it still is a good game, nevertheless, especially for longtime Mario fans and all. So I'm going to break it down, obviously, into the pros and cons, and we'll start off first with the pros. And I will say, in terms of the pros, though, I will say that the game does a very good job staying true or close to the original Super Mario RPG. I mean, yes, some of the visuals have been cleaned up and everything like that, and of course you do see cutscenes that were never originally in the Super Nintendo version and everything like that. But nevertheless, I will give the people who worked on this game very good job staying true to basically the original, while giving it also a fresh coat of paint. I believe I remember hearing that this game was developed under the Unity engine, which, if that's true, I mean, not bad for how they handle that engine and everything like that. So I will give props to the developers for staying close to the original Super Mario RPG. The next thing I do want to talk about is the combat, and the combat still is as good as it was in the original one. Basically, you do have your attack, your special moves, your defense, or you can exit a battle, although not every battle you can exit from. Though, what's interesting about your characters is that you do have to time it when it comes to doing moves. Like, for example, if Mario is using his hammer, if you hit the attack button at the right time, he could do a second attack and all. And if you're trying to protect yourself from the characters, from an enemy attack and everything like that, if you time it right, you can block that enemy's attack and everything like that. This also applies to special moves as well. For example, Mario's jump, if you hit it correctly, you could do damage to even some jumps where you could do multiple jumps at the same time. So it still maintains that in this game, but they've also made some improvements. Some of the improvements ranging from, like, there will be like an exclamation point above the character sometimes. It sort of help you if when to hit the button at the right time for the character to either block or do to time your special move or time your attacks. To even the ability during combat to switch characters out, which is something that was never in the original Super Nintendo version. So let's just say if there's a certain enemy you're facing and you need to switch out some of your characters, like switch out Milo and bring in Gino, you could do that during combat. The only character you can't switch out is Mario. He has to remain, he's the main character in there and all. So there are some interesting things that they did differently with the combat. So there is some improvement here and there, and I do think some of the power-ups, I think they kind of switched around some of the locations. I don't think all of them, though. There are some cases where some of the power-ups or some of the treasures are still in the same spot you may remember back in the original 1996 release. So, but otherwise, combat is still good, and I do like some of the improvements they made to the game and everything like that. And last but not least, I do want to say that in terms of the frames per second, I will say the game mostly stays at 60 frames per second, though. I mean, when moving around the world and everything like that, it usually stays at 60, even during, like, I think, the combat part, which certainly isn't bad. Now, I do think there were points out that Digital Foundry pointed out that sometimes the game dips a little bit in its frame rate, and I will admit I have seen that here and there, but for the most part, it doesn't seem to interfere with the gameplay, especially during the combat side. And since this is really a turn-based RPG, for me, and again, this is my view on this, frame rate isn't as important considering it's a turn-based RPG compared to like an action game in general. Not that I'm not saying frame rate is unimportant or anything like that, it's just that being this is a turn-based RPG, it's not nearly as important as, say, like a first-person shooter or an action game, as I mentioned before. But for the most part, it does stay, at least based on my time at the game, it does stay at 60 frames per second and all. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2, which is the cons. So we'll take a little break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of my video review of Super Mario RPG for the Nintendo Switch. So now that I gave you the pros, why don't we get started with the cons now? And there's really only one con I could think of in regards to my time with Super Mario RPG on the Nintendo Switch. And that is the difficulty, though. Now, to me, although I still think the game is fun and enjoyable, and there are moments where I may have been maybe a little bit rusty, I ain't as good as I used to be when the game originally came out back on the Super Nintendo and all, I will say the game might be a little bit too easy for some, especially for those who might be hardcore into, like, you know, like RPGs in general. This one might come off for some folks like this, like basically like a cakewalk or anything like that. I don't think the difficulty is terrible in the game or anything like that. There are moments where I did have to kind of relearn some of my approach because, as I mentioned before, I'm not as good as I used to when the game originally came out and everything like that. And maybe for a younger audience, the game might be a bit challenging, though, although there is sort of a difficulty setting for this game and everything like that. But I can also understand that the game might be a bit too easy for some folks out there, especially if they like to see a big challenge to if they're playing, you know, like turn-based RPGs in general, though. So to me, I think the difficulty is fine, but I can understand why some might find the difficulty this game to be maybe a little too easy for some folks out there and all. Overall, I would say Super Mario RPG, the remaster / remake, however you want to call it, for the Nintendo Switch, is definitely a good game and still remains one of my favorite entries in the Mario RPG franchises and all. At its best, though, it does stay close to the original with some minor changes here and there. The combat is still good for when the game originally came out, and with some improvements that they made, or quality of life improvements to the combat, though. And for the most part, as I mentioned, the game does stay at 60 frames per second. At its worst, however, is that I can see where some folks might think the game may be a little bit too easy for some out there. So it depends really if you're looking for a real challenge or not. But in either case, though, I'm glad this game is getting another lease on life and everything. And hopefully there is an audience out there who may have missed out when the original one came out in 1996. And although this is sort of a long shot in a way, I would love for Square Enix and Nintendo to team up again and do maybe an actual sequel to Super Mario RPG Legends of the Seven Stars. I know that we don't know if that will happen or not, but I would be open to that idea. Maybe they could get the folks who did, Octopath Traveler or the Brave Default series, or even, the I Am Susumu series, to be exact. I would be open if those folks would actually work on a sequel to Super Mario RPG Legends of the Seven Stars. We don't know if that will ever happen or not, though, but I would definitely be down with that if that ever happens. But in either case, for those who want to take a look at what started the take on Mario entering the RPG realm, it is worth taking a look at Super Mario RPG, even if you were a fan of the original one when it was released near the tail end of the Super Nintendo's life cycle back in 1996 and all. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to part 3 of this double review video, and this one's going to be my take on Paramount Plus's Knuckles series. So we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 3 of my double review, and this one is I'm going to take my thoughts on Paramount Plus's Knuckles, which I just finished watching all 6 episodes and everything like that. Now, in 2020, though, Paramount Studios released Sonic the Hedgehog in theaters. This was right before, I believe, when COVID was just starting and everything like that. But before that movie came out, there was sort of a bit of a controversy, aka the ugly Sonic and everything like that, which forced the studio to delay that movie from its November release to around February, though. And at the time when the first trailer and the announcement was shown, I wasn't 100% sure about that movie, considering that up to that point, movies based off of video games or TV shows in general don't have the greatest track record. And the first trailer that was dropped for the movie didn't exactly spell confidence in this one, though. But by the time the second trailer was shown with the new redesign of Sonic, that's where things started to turn around and people were like, hey, this may actually be good. And so eventually the movie did come out in theaters, and when I actually got a chance to see that movie, I thought, wow, this actually is good. I mean, it's not perfect in any way, but it actually turned out to be much better than I had originally thought. And the movie would do very well at the box office. Plus, I think Jim Carrey stole the show when he played as Dr. Robotnik and everything. This would later follow up, I believe, in 2022 with Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which would bring in Knuckles and, of course, Tails, and basically Idris Elba would be voicing, if I'm saying his name correctly, would be voicing Knuckles and all. And with that one, they also did very well at the box office. And we wait for the holiday seasons for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, with basically this time revolving around Shadow the Hedgehog. And supposedly, although I could be wrong on this one, I believe Keanu Reeves will be voicing Shadow and all. But while we wait for that movie to come out, Paramount Plus decided to do a spin-off or a side story taking place after the events of Sonic 2, but before the start of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 with Knuckles. Now, the idea of Knuckles getting his own show and everything like that was kind of interesting to see them try to do this and all. And after watching all 6 episodes, I would say my opinion on the show is I won't say it's terrible by any stretch, though there are some good moments, but I do feel it doesn't reach the height that the first two Sonic the Hedgehog movies did. So I'm going to break it down into what I like and, of course, what I didn't like, mixed and not 100% sure about. In terms of what I liked about this movie, I will say that basically, Idris Elba, if I'm saying his name correctly, apologize if I'm not. I will say it does still do a good job voicing Knuckles, though. The way his voice and the way he portrays that character is done really well, and it's done very well during the show and everything like that. And there are certainly some funny moments, especially with the character trying to interact with like human life and everything like that and all. So it certainly is very neat how his character is portrayed in the show. So I do have to give credits to him. He does a very good job voicing Knuckles. And finally, episode 3 of the Knuckles series, called the Shabbat, if I'm saying the name correctly, Dinner, it certainly is my favorite episode, though, and a pretty funny one, though. Now, maybe this is me looking at it from a Jewish perspective. I consider myself a Reformed Judaism person myself, but there's a lot of stuff here that even as a Jewish person I would get, especially the battle scene that takes place during what is basically the Shabbat dinner and all. So it was, I would say that one is probably my favorite episode out of all 6 episodes in the Knuckles series. So hats off to that one, to be exact. As far as what I didn't like, mixed, or not 100% sure about in regards of Knuckles, though, I will say the jokes in the show are, I would say, kind of a hit and miss to a certain degree. While there are some moments where I did get a big chuckle and I thought that was pretty funny, there were other times the jokes didn't exactly hit off as well as I would have liked. I mean, one scene is when Wade Wipple is being kidnapped by, I think, like a bounty hunter and tries to go into like this inner demon's spirit or something like that. There was this weird 80s monologue that they tried to do, and I thought it didn't hit very well. I think the only bright spot about that was seeing Wade dress up as Knuckles and trying to do and have a paper cut scene that looks very similar to the classic Sonic the Hedgehog, including some of the bonus levels with the rings and everything. So, I mean, that was funny, but other times I think some of the jokes were just sort of a hit and miss in this one. So some of them were funny, some of them not so much. And last but not least, though, I do feel like, although I did enjoy the show, I do feel like this one was more of a Wade Wipple, played by Adam Pally, if I'm saying his name correctly, story than, say, a Knuckles stories. Not that I think it was bad, but personally, I would have loved if they did one where, at a time when Knuckles, before he came to Earth and everything like that, in terms of what happened to his tribe and everything, they do mention it during this series, but I would have preferred mostly like him interacting with people, his involvement with the Chaos Emerald and all. So this one just felt more focused on just Wade Wipple and not as much as Knuckles and everything like that. I mean, I'm not against the idea of Knuckles trying to teach Wade Wipple, to be like a warrior and all, even though, he plays bowling and all. Don't get me wrong, I like bowling and everything. It's just something that I felt like it would have been better if this was just like a Knuckles origin story than how this one is portrayed. Overall, I would say Knuckles, I'm kind of mixed on this one. I don't think it's terrible by any chance. I still think it's good. I feel like it just doesn't reach the height that Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2 did when those hit the theaters, though. At its best, though, Idris Elba does a really good job voicing Knuckles. And of course, like I mentioned, episode 3, the Shabbat Dinner, is a personal favorite of mine. I like that one. That's my favorite episode. But at its worst, though, I will say some of the jokes, at least from my perspective, it's kind of a hit and miss. Some are done pretty well, some not as much. And like I said, I felt like this was more of a Wade Wipple story than a Knuckles stories. But in your case, if you like the first 2 Sonic movies, though, you'll probably enjoy Knuckles and everything like that. It certainly isn't bad. I will give Paramount in general credit for adding this to the Paramount Plus subscription and everything like that. It will be very interesting if they do decide to do one on maybe like Tails or any of the other characters that could make an appearance maybe after Sonic the Hedgehog 3 or before, most likely after Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and everything. But overall, I would say my takeaway from Knuckles is it's okay. It's not awful, but I would say to me it just doesn't reach the height that Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2 did when those hit the theaters and all. Okay, this concludes my double review of Super Mario RPG for the Nintendo Switch and my thoughts on Paramount Plus's Knuckles. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about Super Mario RPG for the Nintendo Switch? Do you think it was a good thing for Nintendo to bring this over to the Nintendo Switch? Do you think it was a bad thing and all? Are there parts about the game you like? Do you think some of the gameplay saw some improvements and everything? Do you think the game is maybe too easy at all? Or do you think the difficulty is just right? What are your thoughts about Paramount Plus's Knuckles? Do you think the show is good by any chance? Do you think it was able to hold its own without, like, say, Jim Carrey playing Dr. Robotnik in this in any way? Do you think the jokes were hit and miss? Were there elements you thought were good? Were there elements that you thought were bad? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal me or Patreon or Steam Labs. Links will be in the description of this video, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!